This is the book Beat Depression by David Hinds from 2001. Part 3, States of Depression. Chapter 17, Is This Your Child? Children begin by loving their parents. After a time they judge them. Rarely, if ever, do they forgive them. Oscar Wilde, 1854 to 1900. A woman of no importance. The bottom line, a happy childhood for their offspring, is the wish of every parent, but not the experience of every child. It is unrealistic to expect a child, particularly a young one, to say, "I am depressed." In fact, the child who is truly sad is unlikely to be able to ask for help in any language that those in a position to remedy the situation can be expected to understand, even if they are prepared to forget their own troubles long enough to listen and respond. My childhood got off to a flying start, but crash-landed at the age of 7. I have fond preschool memories of Listen with Mother on the radio and great affection for my infant school days when I learned to read. I was enchanted by words and stories. Whenever it was time to go home from school, I would put the book I was reading into my satchel to continue reading when I got home, returning it to the classroom bookshelf the next morning before selecting another. One day, to my horror, a teacher pointed an accusing finger at me as I was stuffing a partly read adventure story into my satchel and scolded, "David, you know you don't take school books out of school." I can still remember the disappointment I felt at being deprived of an immense pleasure. This famine in reading material coincided with a marked deterioration in my parents' marriage, and I withdrew into myself. I left both school and home in the early hours of my 16th birthday with no academic qualifications. The following year, I was admitted to a psychiatric hospital for 10 weeks, following an attempted suicide. I did not know and would probably not have cared at the time if I had known that I was suffering from clinical, major depression. Anxiety, depression, and mood disorders are serious problems that afflict all too many children and teenagers. Sadly, in many but not all such situations, had their parents or teachers been more informed and less preoccupied with other issues, problems could have been identified and treated, and in some cases prevented in the first place. What greater gift can you give a child at risk of losing their childhood than that of restoring it? Even if they have the most loving and caring mums and dads in the world, some children will become depressed either through biological factors, traumatic experiences, or a combination of both. Furthermore, it is a fact of life that parents cannot protect their children from all the possible causes of depression all of the time. Although much pain and heartache can be avoided with early recognition and treatment when depression occurs. In childhood, young boys are far more likely to be depressed than girls. In adolescence, however, the reverse is true. By the time children reach their teens, girls are twice as likely as boys to become depressed. It is worth noting that boys usually show different symptoms of depression from girls. When young or adolescent boys get depressed, they have a tendency to become angry, disruptive, sullen, even aggressive. The indications of depression in girls of all ages are harder to distinguish because they can be confused with behavioural patterns which are sometimes regarded as socially acceptable. Withdrawal, acquiescence, and passivity. The best defence against depression that parents can give their children is to provide a stable and loving home environment and to help them to develop resilience in life. Resilient children recover more quickly from frustration, disappointment, misfortune, and change. They are less likely to be overwhelmed by the challenges of childhood and adolescence, and consequently, they are far less likely to become susceptible to depression. The most practical and enjoyable way to help very young children achieve resilience is to take an active role in their development by becoming the person they speak to, the person who interprets their experiences, who helps them to overcome their difficulties. By responding to children in this positive, revealing and encouraging way, you assist them in fashioning and shaping the foundations for a flexible coping strategy that will allow them to bounce back with ease from the ups and downs of life. Every child is unique. The better you know your kids, their strengths and weaknesses, their likes and dislikes, the more effective you will be in helping them to develop a coping style that will build on their strengths and not on their weaknesses. Children who are encouraged to build confidence and self-esteem on their strengths tend to become individuals who can handle stress without distress, and adults who can achieve their ambitions. In contrast, children who are frequently discouraged or placed in circumstances in which they feel overwhelmed will eventually become discouraged and overwhelmed. They may retreat into themselves in response to their feelings of helplessness and insecurity. This can and often does provide fertile ground for high anxiety, mood disorders, and ultimately for the onset of clinical depression.